Good afternoon, students. Can you believe we're already in week 6? So for the week 6 forum, you're going to post a biased article. In other words, you're going to deliberately find an article that's not believable, that's not credible, and then you're going to post that to the forum, to the week 6 forum, and then tell us, why is this article not credible? Why is this article biased? So that's going to be, this is actually a fun forum because you get to post junk into the forum on purpose. So anything that doesn't fulfill kapow, in other words, if you have, remember, kapow is currency, author, purpose, objectivity, and writing purpose, writing style. And so if you can post an article that's over 10 years old, well, that's not biased, but that's old, so it's no longer credible. Then you could post an article A that's written by like someone that's not an expert, someone that's not believable. Okay, so that's and something that's not credible tends to be biased. That's because when you have a non-credible source, that means that you cannot use that source in your paper. So, or you could post something from Wikipedia. For once, I actually allow you to use Wikipedia, okay? Normally, I tell students, do not use Wikipedia as a source. So then if you post something from Wikipedia, you would say, well, this article is not credible because it lacks APA citations. And so if you look at Wikipedia, some of the articles will actually say, lacks citations, okay? So you could post something from Wikipedia. You can post any article or anything that's an advertisement on the web, because any kind of advertisement is also biased. Bias, what does bias mean? Bias means that you only talk about one side of an issue. It's only that one side, or if you're a reporter, you omit the other side. You only talk about, for instance, Fox News will only talk about how senile President Biden is and how wonderful President Trump was. And therefore, Fox News is biased because it only presents the conservative slant on news, hence only talking about one side of an issue. On the other hand, CNN is also biased because they only talk about the liberal side of the issue. They say that President Trump is the villain. He's the one that can't control his temper, while President Biden is a wonderful president. And so then Fox News and CNN are polar opposites, okay? In which Fox News says, oh, well, Biden is senile, while CNN says Biden is a great president. And both stations are biased. Because if you want to be unbiased, you would say both sides of an issue. So I would say President Trump was a great president because and within the same sentence, and President Trump was not a great president because. Or I would say President Biden was a great president because, and President Biden was not a great president. In other words, you include the good and the bad and the ugly in your reporting. That's considered objective and non-biased. But if you leave out facts, you conveniently leave out facts, and you just talk about one side of an issue, like so-and-so is just a villain, and that's it, and all you focus on is Mr. Smith is a villain because he's a villain, then you're focusing only, that makes you biased, okay? So why are advertisements considered biased? Well, whenever somebody is taking a vested interest or someone has an agenda, then it's biased, because whomever wants to sell you a product, then that person, okay, has a vested interest in that ad because that person wants you to buy their product. And so it's not objective because I want something from you, okay? Wanting something from you is subjective. So therefore, it's an appeal to emotion. It's pathos. So whenever you just have only pathos out of ethos, pathos, and logos, if any one of those appeals are missing, because in order to have a valid and credible source, you have to have ethos, pathos, and logos together all at the same time. If I'm just missing one or the other, In other words, if I make an advertisement and I only appeal to your emotion, pathos, and I leave out ethos and logos, that is a biased article. Because if I leave out ethos, then that means there's no credibility. It's not written by an expert. If I leave out logos, then that means there's no logic. There's no thesis statement. So, and then if only, so a good example of a advertisement that's only pathos, that is appeal to emotion, are those ASPCA commercials where they show pictures of cruelty to animals, where you see the pathetic dog and where you see something shivering, and then they tell you, they get you to feel sorry for the dog or the cat, and then they ask you for money. So that's an appeal to emotion. That's pathos. So that's biased. So for your week 6 forum, you can post any kind of sponsored content or ad from the internet. Then you're going to explain to me or to the audience, your audience being your peers, this article is biased because it is an advertisement. The author has a vested interest in this article. So if you want to, you can post, or you could post something from Wikipedia. This article is biased because it's from Wikipedia. Anybody can upload anything to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia lacks APA citations. So I'm going to also do a lecture on APA, because as long as you have APA citations, then that makes the what you have, your source, credible. Okay, so APA makes it credible, and APA helps you to avoid plagiarism. And so in the week 6 forum, I'm going to go over a few characteristics of bias. Okay, so in the week 6 forum, which is called Bias in Writing, you will post biased articles in the week 6 forum. A biased article is a one-sided article that talks about one side of an issue. Biased articles omit certain facts, and it's not fair and balanced. And a biased article only appeals to someone's emotions, and therefore, and only on one side of an issue. And then also a biased article emphasizes only certain parts of a fact. So if you have a biased article, it then reinforces stereotypes, because instead of, for instance, if you say all Chinese people are good at math, then you're focusing only on a small part of Chinese people, because only a small part of Chinese people are good at math. Not everyone is. Not all Chinese people are good at math. So when you focus only on a small part of a topic, and you just give an overly simplified explanation of a topic, then you end up with a fallacy. It's called the overgeneralization fallacy. That's when you base your claim on false evidence. Okay? Any kind of fallacy is when you make a claim and you have non-credible or false evidence. This is why when we write our papers, we want our papers to be non-biased, and we want to use credible evidence. And we find out if something is credible by using kapow, or by using ethos, logos, pathos, or the rhetorical triangle, in which you have, and anything that we did in the week 5 that's due Monday. Okay, so that's the week 5 forum. In the week 5 forum, when we evaluated articles to see if they're credible or not. So a lot of this course, English 105, I don't know if you've noticed already, a lot of this course is about how to evaluate credible sources, and to teach you critical thinking skills where you don't believe everything you read. You certainly don't believe what's on social media. So if you're getting your news from social media, then you're getting biased articles. You're getting articles that even could be written by artificial intelligence. That's a new danger that they're looking into. How can you tell if the article is written by a human or by artificial intelligence? And then the people behind the artificial intelligence may have an agenda. So that's a whole new area, okay, that they're exploring, that can defy kapow, or it can defy ethos. Not quite yet, okay? But someday it will. So that's on the horizon. So basically in English 105, we want to believe in credible sources. We want to believe in the truth. We want to be able to tell fact from fiction. We want to avoid fallacies. Fallacies is when you make a claim and then you have false evidence to back up your claim. Okay, so we never back up our claims with false evidence. We never believe in ads or advertisements, propaganda, fake news, sponsored content. Anytime you see sponsored content and says it's an ad promoted by, sponsored by, that's a biased article. So for your Week 6 forum, you get to post fun, biased articles. Also, another area of biased articles, satire. Anything from The Onion, okay, is satire. And so you want to know, and of course Onion tells you up front that they are satire and that they're making fun of current events. So we also don't believe in satire. Satire is just a joke, okay? So, and also anything that lacks multiple perspectives, that's also a one-sided article. And so biased articles lack evidence, credible evidence, it lacks documentation, in other words, if you have a website and there's no author, that's also a biased website. And then anything in any ad in which the author has a vested, I already said this already, I know I'm repeating myself. Anytime an author has a vested interest in the article. So, and biased articles, they exaggerate the facts. They use strongly worded assertions. So that's like clickbait. So clickbait means that the more clicks that person gets on his website, the more money he makes. So clickbait is also a biased article. And so clickbait articles would say something like, oh, look at what John Smith looks like now. Do you want to see what he looks like now? And then you have all these exclamation points. Or 5 tricks to melting away your fat. Doesn't that sound like a commercial to you? Yeah, that's a clickbait. So clickbaits are like commercials with lots of loud words, lots of exclamation points, and therefore you've got to be wary of that. So you can, by the way, you can post this to the Week 6 forum, because we are on purpose going to post messages that look really biased and outrageous, and then we're going to explain to everybody, but why is this outrageous? Why is this not credible? So this is a very fun forum, okay? So you get to post nonsense. You could also post anything from the National Enquirer, from a gossip magazine, any kind of popular source that's not credible. We are not going to post, whereas the opposite of non-credible sources are credible sources. Credible sources like peer-reviewed sources like you would see in a library. Okay, that is credible sources that you can use for your paper. So a biased article would not be found here in your online library. Okay, that can be found in your tabloids if you go to the grocery store and you would read about Jane Smith's last days, final last days, and then they'll exaggerate it. You don't really know. Maybe Jane Smith just has a cold, and they exaggerate it to mean that it's her last days. Jane Smith is meeting a friend at lunch, and then they'll exaggerate it to say she's having an affair or something like that. So that's examples of how biased articles can exaggerate things to the point it's not true anymore. And so National Enquirer is a great place to find biased, exaggerated, non-credible sources. Okay, so out of all of my other lectures, this one is fun because I'm telling you that it's okay to do something not following the rules is okay for your Week 6 forum. So that's kind of fun. That's why I'm having fun doing this. And so when journalists present biased news, that means that they're only telling one side of the story. And these days, almost all of the television news stations are all biased. For example, CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, liberal, okay? Ideological bias. In other words, bias towards Democrats, towards the liberals. Then you've got Fox News, and you've got Newsmax, okay? Breitbart, and I think it's Babylon Bee. Those are all conservative. So those are all one-sided and biased. So you can. So if you're going to get a article from Fox News, you would, and it says, "Oh, Biden is senile." Okay, then that's one-sided because it only talks about how Biden is a bad president without also telling you how Biden is a good president. Because you've got to have balance. Okay, the good, the bad, and the ugly equals balanced, credible reporting. And CNN, Fox News, all of them, okay? Either they're to the left or to the right. So everybody is biased. And why is our TV news? It's called media bias. So if you want to Google media bias, they'll give you a chart in which you see a whole bunch of stations to the right and a whole bunch of stations to the left. Very few stations are neutral. Why is because when you're neutral, it's boring. If you ever watch Walter Cronkite from the 60s, that's when news was more objective. But the reason why they don't have objective news is that it's very dull, okay? It doesn't bring in the ratings. Whereas if you have, well, I'm going to discuss that as under personal bias next week. When we go over different kinds of personal bias, and when you have personal bias, that's what causes everybody to be like one-sided, and that's what causes news stations to appeal to their audience of a certain niche and stuff like that, because everyone has so that's going to be, so this for week 6 forum, I'm going to focus on bias in writing. Okay, so how do we spot articles and written articles that are biased and only talk about one side of an issue and that they're not credible, okay? So scholarly sources like this and peer-reviewed articles, that is credible. That's what you use in your paper. And then National Enquirer and everything that we're going to post into week 6 forum, we're not going to use that in your paper. And if I see anybody use Wikipedia in your week 7 paper, you will lose points. It's that simple, because anybody can post anything to Wikipedia. But for this time only, you're welcome to post Wikipedia, just to tell everybody we don't post to Wikipedia. Okay, so that's why this one's a fun, because I could tell you what not to. So here's some more about clickbaits. Okay, clickbaits. You'll never believe this. Blah 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 blah. How to achieve results in under 3 days. How to have a diet in 2 days. Miracle cure for such and such a disease. Or warning signs of such and such cancer. You've got to be aware of such and such. One weird trick to melt away your fat, and then exclamation points. This is the best socks you'll ever wear. Or this is what happens to you if you eat turmeric, or if you eat such and such. Miracle cure. These 5 things you need to know for the holiday season. Okay, all of this is clickbait to get you hooked to the article, and you will click on it to say, oh my God, what is it? Okay, and then as soon as you click on it, then the advertiser who wrote the article gets money each time someone, that's why they call it clickbait. And for once, you can post a clickbait article to the week 6 forum to tell us, well, why is this not a credible message? And so we're dealing with many different kinds of biases. You have ideological bias, where you've got people slanted to the right or the left. You've got spin bias, that's the same thing, the left or the right. And then you've got sensationalism, that's clickbait. Okay, sensationalism is when you exaggerate. That's sensationalism bias. That's when you exaggerate something out of, and then if you go to a website called Student News Daily Website, I'll repeat that, Student News Daily Website. They offer examples of biased articles that you can post to the week 6 forum. But then this involves you got to read. They will tell you why it's biased, but then you have to read it, and you cannot just cut and paste directly what they say. That's another thing that's new to the forums. We cannot cut and paste what something says on the internet directly into our forum without citing the source. Because if you don't cite your source, and whatever you post, if let's say you do want to cut and paste something from the internet, you've got only 3 lines, you've got to put it in quotation marks, and then you have to put the author, the date, and the page number. Remember, because now our forums are now being automatically sent to Turnitin. And so if you do post a clickbait, then you have to post the source. Where did you get that from? What website did you get it from? And so everything has to have APA. We always cite where we get our information to avoid plagiarism and to avoid Turnitin. So in that way, you still have to follow the rules, because all of the forums in English 105, I think starting this semester, will now be put into Turnitin, just like your papers, okay? So and that also means that you cannot copy and paste stuff from previous forums that you used in previous classes, okay? So you can't repeat the same thing. So that means if you write an introduction, like your introduction forum, a lot of students write the same introduction from class to class to class to class. I believe now you're going to have to find a different way to word it, or find different aspects of yourself to write about. So in one class, you might write about your hobbies. In another class, you're going to write about what you like to read. So this will force you to be more original in your. This is nothing to do with week 6. Sorry, I see how I rambled. Okay, so I end this video about you can post things, biased articles, to your week 6 forum and have fun doing so. Just remember to cite it. So if you have any questions, okay, you can always email me. And sorry that I went off track. I've had students tell me that I ramble too much in my talking. So if you have any questions, feel free to email.